Hey, welcome back to Yellow Ball. Today we're getting into the AAC. A lot of changes in this conference this year, Ashley. A lot of changes.
Yeah, lots of changes, lots of switcheroos.
uh, yeah, you're you're so lame. You're so lame. Um, yeah. So last year at the regular season, Wichita State finished first. Central Florida at 2, South Florida at 3. They go into the conference tournament, and Wichita State gets upset in the semifinals by Tulsa, who goes on to face Central Florida in the championship, and Central Florida just puts a hurting on Tulsa like they're supposed to. Um, a definite shocker that Wichita State lost to Tulsa in the semifinal round. Um, but going into this year, it almost doesn't matter. I mean, Wichita State's still there, Tulsa's still there, South Florida's still there, Central Florida's out. They went to the Big 12.
And that
I
was your top
mean,
teams in the conference.
yeah, I mean, I, outside of Wichita State and Central Florida, like this conference as a whole is just not super competitive, or they weren't last year anyway.
Yeah.
South Florida is like kind of close, but not. Uh, South Florida is close, but they're just not the same as Wichita State and Central Florida. Um, but anyway, we'll get into all the newcomers later on in the episode. We're pretty much going to talk about everybody this episode because it's hard not to because half the conference has changed. So anyway, we start out Wichita State, who, like we said, finished first. They're a pretty solid team last year. I mean, like they're competing as far as team numbers go. They're competing with some of our Power Five schools that we've talked about. That, and I mean, they're outperforming the majority of the Big Ten.
Yeah, they just came up short in their own conference, which, I mean, they still got to move on to regionals, but I don't know. With the numbers like theirs, I mean, they had a 44-12 season, 16-2 in conference.
Mhm.
And with those numbers, I feel like they probably should have gone a little further than just regionals, but tough to do once
Yeah,
you
I
get.
mean, do you remember what regional they went to? I do not,
No,
unfortunately.
and I should have wrote it down. Let me see if I
Yeah.
can find out.
I mean, you're once you get into playoffs, you get into the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's everybody you face at that point is good. I'll kind of put that in air quotes because there were some teams that made the tournament that were not good. Um, and then when you're talking about powerhouse, like softball powerhouses, it typically doesn't matter who they play, they're not as good.
Right.
Like Oklahoma, it doesn't matter who they play, even in Power Five, they're not as good. Florida
Yeah.
State, generally the same. Georgia, Clemson, like they're all playing other teams within regionals that are just not as good as they are. Um, but that doesn't hold true for every regional. I mean, look at UCLA. It just crap to bed last year. Anyway,
What were you saying?
I was saying that offensively, Wichita State is better than most Power Five schools. Like
Yeah, most. You're right in that
not
statement.
not not necessarily the top three from each Power Five conference that we've talked about, but everybody who's not in the top three, they're offensively, they're generally better. Like they may not put up as many home runs, like you compare them to Virginia Tech, who was like fifth in the ACC. Virginia Tech was just freaks. They hit over 100 home runs. But from a team batting average standpoint, yeah. From a
And
team
on
on
base
base,
percentage.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, even runs scored. I wouldn't say they're at like the top tier for runs scored necessarily, because obviously with Oklahoma, like they're an outlier. I would almost throw Florida State in there as an outlier as well because they were over 400, but there were a couple of teams that were over 400. Not many, but a couple. Um, but I mean, they're like 5 runs shy of Texas. So like they're upper echelon for runs scored. Not, like I said, not top tier, but definitely very productive.
Sticking around. They're also up there in something that most teams are rocking a 960, and they're sitting at a higher
Yeah,
side of the fielding percentage.
I think the only other team that had a higher fielding percentage was Oklahoma, and I think that was by a point.
Yeah, Arizona's was up there, but I don't remember.
I think Arizona's was a point as well.
Okay,
I think Oklahoma and Arizona were both sitting at 985. But
okay. I
their
I
pitch,
did find ooh, tough. I did
go ahead.
find what regional they were in. I thought it was the Oklahomas, but it was Oklahoma State's. So they were in the Stillwater one. It was Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Wichita State, and then UMBC. And obviously Oklahoma State won that regional.
Yeah, and Wichita State did not make it to the championship of that regional. It ended up being Oklahoma State and Nebraska. But I
Yeah.
mean, Nebraska could hit a little bit last year. Oklahoma State could hit last year. Oklahoma State had better pitching. I don't believe that Nebraska had better pitching necessarily than Wichita State. It might have been marginally better,
Yeah. Well, you
but
better believe
all
Nebraska will have better pitching this year.
yeah, but ultimately it was Wichita State's pitching that wasn't able to withstand regionals. Sitting at a 2.55 team ERA, which is not bad by any means, but it's not it's not any of your softball
It's
powerhouse pitching
yeah,
staffs.
it's not shutting down a
It's
powerhouse
almost
offense.
yeah, no, it's almost a point higher than your really, really good pitching staffs. Um,
And what's interesting is as you move from the Power Five into the Group of Five, you notice that that's a really big difference between the
yeah,
teams is the
which
pitching ERA.
yeah, which oddly enough, I've said before, if your circle sucks, it doesn't matter what you do offensively.
Right.
And unfortunately for Wichita State, they proved that. Not in the grand scheme of their season, but like their pitching didn't hold up in their conference tournament.
Yeah.
And then when they go to regionals, it didn't hold. So they gotta this year they gotta bring in a little bit better a little bit better pitching. They gotta develop those pitchers a little bit more, or bring in better arms or something. If they really want to make a deep NCAA tournament run. Uh, but if we look at some of the pieces they lost this year or going into this year, I mean, they lose some pretty significant production in obviously Sydney McKinney, who somehow managed to hit over 500, which that's insane.
Yeah. Her
Um,
stats in general were insane to me.
yeah, I mean her home run numbers were not, but everything else was. You hit
Yeah, she was
500.
just
You
consistency.
hit Yeah, you hit 520. You still bang 5 home runs. You're in some way, shape, or form responsible for over 100 runs with 33 RBIs and 76 runs scored. 76 runs scored, that's a lot.
That's yeah.
Uh, it's not Kiki Malloy, but it's a lot. 562 on base percentage. That's very that's you're not gonna find that. That's few and far between. With 18 walks and 18 stolen bases. That's that's some hefty offense right there.
Yeah. Rocking over 100 hits in one season. It's
Yeah.
just and that would be
Kind
why she was the number one pick for Athletes Unlimited.
yeah, makes sense. Rocking some Ichiro Suzuki numbers right there. Um, and then they lose Lauren Mills. I know, like, you had Sydney McKinney, and then you just kind of stopped after one, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, which I mean that's fine, but um, they lose two other pieces in Lauren Mills and Zoe Jones, who both batted over 300. They both hit 10 or
Double
more
digit
home
home runs.
runs. Yeah,
Hmm.
and RBIs were 40 plus for both of them. 25 run score for Lauren Mills and 35 run score for Zoe Jones. Lauren Mills had a 495 on base percentage and walked 38 times. Right. You're talking about two other pieces in your lineup that are right, really helping drive Sidney McKinney in.
Yeah, I mean, between the three of them, you have almost 300 runs.
Yeah. And
So
Wichita State only scored 365 on the season. So pretty pretty significant chunk of change right there you're losing.
that's going to
Um,
put a little bit of a hurt in the runs.
yeah, for sure.
Offensive production.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but they do return two really good hitters in Lauren Lucas and Addison Barnard. Um, they both hit over 350. Addison Barnard hit 14 home runs last year. Lauren Lucas only four. But again, you're still talking about two girls who individually were responsible for over 100 runs,
Right.
whether it be RBIs or runs scored. They both have over a 450 on base percentage, tons of walks. Addison Barnard, coupled with her 14 home runs, also had 22 stolen bases. So like they still have speed. They still have girls that can hit at least two. I'm sure they have more than just two, but um, they returned their entire pitching staff from. They got their ace and Lauren Howell back. They got
Mm.
their number two and Alex Aguilar back, and their number three and Allison Cooper back. Um, Me personally, I think they should throw Alex Aguilar more because she posted a sub two ERA. Uh, but Lauren Howell and Aguilar, they both had similar records. Alex Aguilar had a 15-4 record, Lauren Howell had an 18-4 record. But Lauren Howell's ERA was almost an entire point higher,
Yeah.
which isn't terrible by any means at a 2.68. That's not terrible, but you're talking about trying to compete with an Oklahoma State in their regional. You have to do a little bit better than that. So
I wrote Alex Aguilar down as somebody to watch. And I got, normally I take pretty decent notes. And the only notes that I truly wrote down was her ERA, her record, her innings pitched, her complete games. But then I wrote down one of her accolades, which was the AAC Rookie of the Year.
Mm. Yeah, so
So
she
my
was
question, obviously she's pretty good, but my question then is after she wins that, and you know that you have two arms that both threw over 100 innings, do you think
three.
Alex Aguilar, yeah, three, do you think Alex Aguilar sees more time than she did last year?
That's a tough one. I mean, as a coach, you have to recognize that you had a freshman last year in Alex Aguilar who performed really well and did so as a freshman with no previous college experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have to think that, you know, midway through the season last year, you knew Alex Aguilar was gonna be something special for you, and you still chose to go with the experience in Lauren Howell. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And Lauren Howell is still gonna have that upper hand. So I don't know. Uh, Me personally, like I've already said, I would throw Alex Aguilar more, and I would start taking innings away from Lauren Howell and Allison Cooper a little bit. Um, so that way, Alex Aguilar is throwing 175 innings, and the other two are, sitting at 100, and the other one at, 80, 85, something like
Yeah.
that. Mm. But I don't know. I'm not in their head coach's head or in her ear. I couldn't tell you. Me personally,
That's
though, I
true.
would I would look at throwing Aguilar more.
Yeah,
But
we're on the same page there.
yeah, but too, like you could also think that, especially with it being a group of five school, uh, um, I know funding at most Division I schools is fine. It's and Wichita State is no exemption to that, but there may be less. I know there's less TV coverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some schools, like a Wichita State, may not have the they may not have as much film for other teams to study. And especially with Alex Aguilar being a freshman, like you only, unless it came from last year, like during the season last year, you had no idea what Alex Aguilar could throw.
Right.
You know, you may have had a scouting report from some other coaches, um, but outside of that one scouting report, like if she went off script, you know, you don't know. I mean, any Division I athlete and a Division I coach would you would think would be able to come up with a plan to, be a little Gumby, be flexible, and make an adjustment on the fly. But there are pitchers like, I mean, take Jordy Ball for instance. Like, what adjustment do you make for Jordy Ball? You have all the film in the world that you could ever
Right.
want off of Jordy Ball, and nobody can hit her. For 2 years, nobody's been able to hit her. You know, so all that to say, it could have been a situation where they're just with Alex Aguilar being a freshman, there wasn't a lot known about her, and that may have helped. I don't want to say pad her stats a little bit, but like it may have given her the upper hand, given her an advantage going into weekend series.
Okay. Yep.
But I feel like after after putting up a 15-4 record, and I know she had a lot more appearances than just those 19, and a lot more games started than just those 19. You have to think that that wasn't a fluke, and it
Right.
wasn't really because she was just a freshman and nobody knew anything about her. So I'm going to stand by what I said earlier, and that she should see the bulk of the innings.
I
She should
agree.
be the she should be the workhorse.
Yep.
But anyway, moving on, they bring in a transfer in CC Wong, an infielder from. She's a transfer from Grand Canyon. Didn't see a lot of playing time at Grand Canyon. Not really sure why, because prior to that, she was the 2022 JUCO D1 Co-Player of the Year after batting almost freaking 600 and hitting 27 home runs with 91 RBIs.
Then she got the GCU, and GCU is like, yeah, we're gonna give you 45 game appearances. See what you can do with that. And she's a power lefty. Like, I know there's Ruben lineups for left-handed batters.
Yeah, I don't know if she was maybe battling an injury or something. I didn't see any note of that in her bio. And that's like most players that don't play very much in their bio. It may say it was like battling an injury, saw limited playing time or something like that, but that wasn't on there. Um, and I don't really follow GCU softball super closely,
Yeah.
but I mean, just odd to think that like you have that caliber athlete over there sitting on your bench, and you're just like, nah, I ain't gonna play her, which I'm sure added to her decision to transfer.
Right.
So maybe you do replace a little bit of that offensive production you lost in Sydney McKinney, Lauren Mills, and Zoe Jones. Uh,
You
Definitely, if she
definitely bring
decides
in
to,
the power.
yeah, I was about to say definitely if she decides to come in and hit 27 home runs again.
Yeah.
um, and Wichita State brings in a plethora of freshmen.
Lethman. I heard it.
You couldn't just like let it slide and just let it
Nope.
keep going. Yeah.
Never.
They bring in 6 freshmen. Um, Not a whole lot on their freshmen. I know they bring in one catcher, and outside of the one freshman catcher, Sophie Johnson, that they only have one more. So I would expect Sophie Johnson to get her fair share of innings behind the plate. She may not see a lot of at bats this year, uh, but she's definitely going to try to. I'd imagine she's definitely going to be used to try to save their starting catcher's knees a little bit.
Yeah, for that catcher's sake, I really hope so because I know way you'd catch me sitting behind a plate squatting for 50 games. Mm-mm.
Yeah,
No.
mm, no thanks. But Sophie Johnson did hit 30 home runs in high school, so she has power. She has potential to drive the ball out of the ballpark. Um, but we'll see what happens with the rest of these freshmen for sure. We'll move on to South Florida. I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna let you take this one.
Well, as soon as I can find my South Florida notes, I will. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, they're right here. They're right here. Also, I don't have my contacts in, so I'm really trying to focus on the words and not the blurriness surrounding them. Anyways, South South Florida is one of the teams that was in the American Conference last year. Um, and they're staying this year. They finished third, and they finished their season 32 and 24. Third in conference. I don't know. Let me think on what I want to say about that. 10 and 7 in conference play. I don't think 10 and 7 should get you a third place finish in your regular season, but it's something that they did worked, I guess. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a super impressive record by any means. They didn't go out and, beat people left and right. They I'm sure they didn't have like some gigantic win streak. They probably won one, lost two, won two, lost one, won three, lost one, lost two. Like there's a lot of inconsistency there.
Yeah.
Um, but just consistent enough to stay above 500. I mean, I did notice that like when they were playing UCF, for instance, like they were in all of those ball games. They weren't just getting slapped around,
Right.
you know. Um, they're just I don't know, man. Like they're just not they weren't good offensively and they weren't good in the circle. They weren't terrible in the circle. That's probably what kept them in a lot of ball games.
Yeah.
But offensively, like they just could not score. And you're talking 216 runs on the season in a 50 some game season.
Two players
50,
for Wichita State had that.
yeah, that's not good. That's really terrible, actually. Huh. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
their
compare
field,
their numbers to Wichita State. They're 247 batting average and they're 326 on base percentage. Wichita State had a better batting average than USF had of an on base percentage, which is just
yeah,
pretty not good.
it's just trash,
Yeah.
is what it is. Like you can put up South Florida and a picture of Forky, and it's the same.
Uh,
I, I'm just calling it like I see it. And
I'm trash. Yes.
I mean, I will say it appears as though their coaching staff went out and they were trying to replace that whole freaking lineup because they brought in a bunch of transfers. Um, I mean, we'll just jump right into transfers. I mean, they bring in two outfielders, three outfielders. They bring in three outfielders, an infielder, and a pitcher. Um, Unfortunately, their position players, like none of them really stood out. They didn't seem to get a lot of playing time at their other schools, or if they did get a lot of playing time, they didn't put up good numbers. Like they're, batting like 250 or something like that career.
Hmm.
But I will say the pitcher that they bring in, Bell Sarja, JUCO transfer from Florida Southwestern State, was the D1 pitcher of the year. Or yeah, she was voted as the NJCAA D1 pitcher of the year and the NFCA JUCO D1 pitcher of the year last year. Um, went
Rightfully
41
so.
and yeah, went 41 and 5 on the year with a 1.05 ERA and threw almost 300 innings in 2 years.
Man, I know her shoulder was hurting. By the time by the time March rolled around, she's like, all right, it's over.
Oh,
Doesn't
that
feel her
was in
arm
2 that
anymore.
was in 2 years. That was in 2 years.
Okay, well, by the time this before this season rolled around, her arm probably was hurting anyways.
I mean, maybe. I
Mine
felt
would be.
either way, I mean, she's definitely the highlight of their transfers.
Yeah.
Um, and I would imagine she's probably gonna put the team on her back and Marshawn Lynch, South Florida's pitching staff. Um, but they do have another pitcher who's returning, who's their ace last year, in Peyton Dixon, who
Hmm.
was 13 and 6 last year with a 1.5 ERA. So, I mean, it looks like they're going to have two really good pitchers, and that's where the team starts in the circle. So yeah, pitching staff should be pretty solid this year, I'd imagine. Um, they had one really solid hitter for him last year, and Marissa Trivelpiece as a utility. Um, batted over 300, hit 8 home runs. Could have done with a better on base percentage, just a couple points shy of 400, but not bad. Definitely the best hitter on their team last year.
Yeah, I mean, she led her team in what, 4, 5 maybe categories? I know it was 4.
Yeah, I mean, hard to do on a team that doesn't score ever, but also not hard to do on a team that doesn't score ever. um,
True.
yeah, I mean, I hope for South Florida's sake that they these transfers that they're bringing in actually get the job done, because watching a team that can't hit is just no bueno.
Not a lot of people want to watch that.
Yeah, it's rather boring.
Yeah.
Like, history can be made and it could be the most boring thing in the world. Like a perfect game.
Yeah.
A perfect game
It's
is
so
only
boring.
yeah, but it's only exciting when the last out is recorded.
Right.
But
I mean, it's exciting probably for the pitcher who's throwing it.
most pitchers
Like,
don't even know.
no, because the second you think about it, it's gonna get
It's when
ruined.
you yeah, it's when you jack it up. Yeah.
Yep.
Um Interestingly enough, they add a third pitcher to this dynamic duo they got going on with freshman Julia Apostolakos, who was the 2022 New Jersey Gatorade Player of the Year. She comes in as a pitcher utility player. She was also an NFCA first team All American in 2021 and 2022. She put up some pretty solid numbers in high school.
Uh, yeah, I'd, I'd say maybe a little bit better of a word than pretty solid. I mean, I have a
So
.13 ERA.
0.13. Okay.
Yeah.
I have 0.34. But
Ooh,
either way, either way,
I
this
don't.
not
I mean, it's under a .5. It's under a 1.
yeah. Yeah. I
It's
mean, like, granted, high school is vastly different than Division 1, but like that's better than what Najee Kennedy put up last year. And Najee Kennedy's
goaded.
just in yeah. But she also batted 656 with 11 home runs and 59 RBI. So, I mean, you're bringing in a dual threat with this kid, and you can't slot her in as a PO right off the bat, actually.
I wasn't gonna say it about her, but I'm looking at it. I think I wrote down. I guess I wrote down her career numbers. So now I'm wondering, is this .13 her career ERA? That's even crazier.
I'm not sure, because this .34 that I have only accounts for 26 games. She went 26-0 last year.
Hmm.
So maybe.
Maybe I wrote down her. I mean, if she had a
Point
.34 last year, and then her career is a .13, that means 8.
I know we mentioned Tulsa earlier. Um Tulsa did not finish in the top 3, but I
I hate their stats.
they're yeah, I mean their stats weren't great, and they weren't like, what were they, a about a 500 team last year?
Yeah, they're 25 and 28.
Ooh, sub 500.
9 and 9 in
Yeah.
conference, but 25 and 28 overall.
Yeah, I mean, not great by any means, but when I was looking through their roster for this year, they're returning their entire starting lineup. Um they they bring in a JUCO transfer in Alexa Hopkins, who was a first team All American last year,
Mhm.
was 22 and 2 in the circle with a 1.05 ERA. They bring in another JUCO transfer in Macy Cole, who was a second team All American. Um, she was a second team NFCA JUCO All American and a third team in JCAA All American. Catcher utility who batted 454. This is just this is just crazy. This is like David Ortiz, Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa home run numbers. Hit 38 home runs last year. What? Or not last year, in her 2-year JUCO career. My bad. But still, I mean, you divide 38 by 2, that's 16. No. Yeah, 16.
It's
Is it not?
19.
Wow. 19. Oh man.
You're so confident.
I I don't know what I was thinking.
Oh. Should really have a calculator on hand.
I should
Just
just I should really just stop trying to do math, especially in the middle of a recording and then
oh,
posting it publicly. But,
well, it'll
we all
give people
can't
a good laugh.
yeah, we all can't be mathematicians, and I'm not ashamed to say I don't do the maths anymore. So,
That's why calculators were made,
that is
relatively.
correct. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, they didn't look great last year at all as far as their record goes. South Florida looked better technically, but like, did they?
Not much.
Right. I mean, they returned Haley Morgan and Imani Edwards. Those were their two top hitters from that. I think they may have had one more who was above both of them. I don't remember. But and when I say like these were Tulsa's two of Tulsa's top hitters, like they weren't just I don't say top hitters for Tulsa. I mean like they were true like they were good hitters. They put up pretty solid numbers last year. I just don't have them written down.
Yeah, I don't have them. Uh, I did pull them up though. I mean, they had a 392 and I think it said a 369
Yeah,
batting
I mean
average. So I mean,
those are respectable batting averages.
right, with a
Like
453 and a 421 on base percentage. So,
yeah, good numbers. Like I said, they would have been good on any other team.
yep.
um, so yeah, I mean, with all of that information in mind, the two transfers they're bringing in, they're returning their two best hitters along with the rest of their starting lineup. Like, I mean, I wouldn't, and given that they made it to the conference championship last year, like I wouldn't be surprised to see them finish
A
two or
little
three
higher up,
this year. Yeah, I mean, I think they finished what 4 or 5 last year in the conference.
maybe.
They weren't that far behind because the rest of the conference was just not very good.
Especially not the bottom two teams.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean that's about it. That's about all I have on Tulsa, honestly. What you got? You got anything to
I
add to it? No?
Nope. Other than I really hope that this JUCO pitcher they're bringing in helps them lower their ERA.
Yeah. It's not the worst one I've ever seen though.
No, not the worst one. But yeah, they did finish. They finished fourth in the conference last year, right
Yeah, that's
behind
what I
South Florida.
thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. Even though their overall record was just trash, and not really not even close to South Florida's overall record. That conference record is what kept them so close.
Mhm.
Um, you talk about the only two teams left from last year's conference in East Carolina and Memphis. They were just terrible, absolutely terrible. I mean, you're as a team, you're talking, almost 10 points lower in team batting average than over 10 points actually in batting average than South Florida at a 232. They didn't hit very many home runs. East Carolina didn't at 20. They barely scored 200 runs. Like they're just and their team ERA was almost a 4, sitting at an overall record of 27 and 28, which surprisingly better than Tulsa. But that conference record,
I was about to say, but then if you look at that conference record, it's a whole different story.
they must have played some scrubs out of conference, dude. 3
Yeah.
and 15 in conference. That's terrible. And it's
I've
so
seen worse.
unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah. It's so unfortunate though, because you look at the the baseball team at East Carolina and they're like setting records.
Yeah. Which, by the
It's
way, the
it's
baseball team at East Carolina has my favorite baseball uniform of all time.
they're lavender.
Yeah. Can't beat it.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah. Big fan of the lavender
Pretty
with the dark purple on it.
yeah.
Oh, what if I just don't use my AirPods?
I mean, you could do that.
Okay. They're making me mad. And I was trying to have a nice conversation about East Carolina baseball's uniforms.
I mean, you're making this editing process.
Oh, it ain't me.
Oh, it's you.
It's these. It's Apple.
My
It's
stuff works
whatever.
today.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's just a shame to see like essentially the same sport, but one's male, one's female, and the male sport is doing so well, and then the female sport is just it's just not, you know.
Not doing so well in any
Yeah,
way, shape, or form.
but
I'm having some major technical difficulties over here. I'm not really sure what's going on. I think I'm good.
sorry,
It's okay.
Chuck.
It's all right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I didn't I didn't go through their whole roster and like talk. I didn't look at who they had transferring in because it was a lot of the same like no names from other schools that just like weren't very good or didn't put up good numbers at their other school. I don't think they had a ton of transfers anyway because not too many people trying to transfer to ECU. Uh, but I don't know, man. I hope for their sake they can turn it around and be a little bit more competitive, but just
Yeah.
abysmal numbers.
Like I said,
But
I've seen worse.
yeah, but not the worst. Not the worst in the conference. The worst in the conference actually comes from my alma mater. Freaking Memphis sitting at a whopping 8 and 43 on the year, 2 and 16 in conference. Like
That is so
for
painful.
it really is. But let's just I don't there's no need to go back and look at Memphis's schedule. Whoever lost to Memphis last year in conference,
What are you doing?
I really hope you got left out of the tournament, like just barely, or yeah, what are like how? How did you come on? I mean, they're sitting at a 227 team batting average.
I didn't see. Do you know how many runs they scored? I didn't
Yep.
put that down. How many?
Take a wild guess.
185. Was that right?
I wish Memphis scored 185
Oh,
runs.
165. There's no way. 150? I mean, they only won 10 games. Okay, let me think about this logically. Let me think about it logically. They won 10 games. You average 6 runs a game. 85.
No, they scored more than that. Um, no, they scored 129 runs last year.
Well, in 10 games. Oh, well, I forgot that they also played games where they lost. Duh. Just ignore that. Anyways, 129, is that what you said?
Yes.
That's that's pretty garbage. That's
Yeah.
that's forky, actually.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough being a Tigers fan, man.
And I know they're rebuilding. They're trying to rebuild, I should say.
I don't
But it's pretty tough to pull anybody in when you try to
I
recruit
don't
somebody and they're like, "Oh, you were 2-16, no thanks."
yeah, I don't think that a rebuild is the right term because I don't think Memphis has ever been good at softball. I think this is just more of a build.
Mm, okay. We'll call it a build.
Um, I don't know,
At
man.
a loss for words.
Eh, I could handle like one side of the ball just being terrible, you know?
Yeah.
Like ECU, for instance, was terrible offensively. They were terrible defensively. They were terrible in the circle. But like in the circle, you got a little bit of a chance, you know?
Slight.
Yeah, definitely slight. I mean, but enough to get you 27 wins on the season.
Yeah.
Memphis didn't have a shot. Memphis had to put up 10 runs a game to win with an 8.86 ERA as a team. What
That's
is that?
that's terrible. That's
What
terrible.
is that? They out there playing slow pitch.
I don't know, but I I can't be a Memphis softball fan, I can tell you that much. I can cheer for Memphis basketball every now and then Memphis football. I'll cheer for Memphis soccer, that's for sure.
Well, yeah,
Softball ain't,
because you're a bandwagon fan.
softball ain't gonna do the trick. I am not a bandwagon cheering for Memphis football. Be so for real. They're embarrassing.
You just said Memphis soccer.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a little bit of a bandwagon, but
A little
also,
bit, a little bit.
well, it was more so because the NCAA kind of gypped
Just
them
stop. Just
and
stop
didn't give them
talking.
the home field advantage, and that's
Just
dumb.
stop. Just stop talking.
But
Just stop talking. Because the bandwagon, it just rolled by and you hopped right on
well, for the soccer, let's get that clear.
it.
For
Hmm.
basketball and for football, no.
What you mean? We're in the top 25 in the AP poll for basketball. So,
Yeah, actually 23 as of like
hmm,
this morning
yeah.
because they beat
Hmm.
Clemson
Hmm. Yeah. And you
amongst
hopped on
other
the
good teams,
bandwagon.
but it was after they beat Clemson.
Yep.
That
Yep. 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 But their softball team, unfortunately, is trash.
they will
Um,
not be ranked 23.
no, they won't. They brought in a lot of transfers this year. One of which is kind of a hometown girl in Allie Callahan, who we played against. Pretty good ball player.
Agreed.
Transferred from transferred from Central Arkansas. Didn't see a whole lot of playing time in Central Arkansas, which is part of the reason why she transferred.
That makes sense.
But
I
I
just
don't know,
really
man.
hope Memphis Upall wins 10 games this year.
10 is such a low bar.
Just be better than the last.
10 is such a low bar, and I really hate that you just said that.
It's better than the last.
It is, but like it's also not. It's pretty much more of the same, you know?
Well,
Like I would say if they won 10 conference games, then that would be a drastic change.
okay.
Even if they ended up 10 and 41, but those 10 wins came in conference. Right? That would be a drastic change from the previous year. But just 10 wins in general, like that's just not going to cut it. We need to at least win 20 games. We're a freaking D1 mid-major school in a group of 5. We're not, we're not coming out of one of these no-name conferences like the Horizon League. Like, let's go. Okay? Let's get on our horse and get to work like a workhorse.
I
Oh, okay.
no, I'm
Enough
dumb, but I
about.
ain't that dumb.
Oh, I don't know. Um, we can move on now into the brand noobs to the AAC. All of them coming over from Conference USA. You got North Texas, you got UAB, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, and UTSA.
Yeah, you got 4 really good teams coming over from Conference USA. And you got one that could use some work. They're about in the same boat as Memphis. So that's UTSA if you didn't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. UTSA, kind of trash on the softball field. Um, Definitely resembles a Memphis for sure. Um, I hate to say that about teams because I know these girls work really hard and they're trying their best to win some ball games, put together a good season, and it just like doesn't happen.
Doesn't work out.
And
Well, and
I
what's
know,
even worse is like that these I don't want to say girls, women are
Mm,
individually really good ball players.
right.
At
Yeah,
least a
and then
majority of them. And then you might put them all on a team and they just don't there's no chemistry, so then the team just doesn't play.
right.
Not
And
to say that
and
as like a bailout, but sometimes that happens every now and then until you figure it out. But
right. Yeah. And I mean, that's not to say that it's all on the players. Like a lot of it has to do with leadership as well. So you're talking about your coaching staff.
mhm,
Um, and then beyond your coaching staff, like your support staff and what kind of funding you're able to provide and, all the behind the scenes stuff. But it definitely comes down to more so leadership, I would say, than it does talent.
yeah,
Because you can do, especially in this game, you can do a lot with a little bit of talent if you have the right leadership.
agreed.
So, but you bring in North Texas. They were 35-22 last year. They were conference runners up. Um, they lost to a really good MTSU team in the uh, tourney championship. Um, and somehow got left out of the NCAA tournament in favor of Charlotte, who won the regular season,
Right.
which and then MTSU, of course, who won the conference tournament. Um, but like North Texas had, didn't they have a better record?
North Texas was
Yeah,
35.
they were 35-22, and Charlotte was 35-23.
Okay. Well,
And Charlotte got upset by North Texas in the conference
and
tournament,
yeah,
which upset, right? They were,
it's pretty much the same. So
yeah, they were like
just
1 and
lost.
2. Yeah. But I mean, just it didn't make any sense to me how North Texas got left out.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it's not it wasn't an upset. Like I get to understand a little bit more if it was a true upset and like North Texas was coming from the bottom half of the conference and then made their way into the conference tournament or whatever, but it wasn't a true upset. Charlotte was sitting right there with them all season
Yeah, I
long.
mean, yeah. And I don't know, I guess like the committee's determining factors is like specifically for Conference USA, who won the regular season and then who won the conference tournament.
Yeah.
And North Texas happened to fall short on both of those ends. But when you're talking about some of the other teams that made it into the NCAA tournament and you leave out North Texas, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, the whole selection committee is kind of dumb,
But I
but
will say offensively, none of these incoming teams are,
super strong.
yeah, I mean they're rocking, South Florida offensive stats. And specifically for North Texas, they're a much better pitching team. Um
Almost at a 2 ERA as a team, which is a lot better than teams in this conference that we've talked about.
yeah, I mean when you're when you go into a game and you know like, man, we're probably going to give up 2 runs, that's still keeping you in a ball game.
Right.
When you go into a game, you're like, we may give up 3, may give up 4. We for
Doable.
sure, yeah, it's doable, but like in your mind, like we for sure got to score 5 if we want to
Hmm.
win. If we want to have a guaranteed chance of winning, we have to score 5. That's a lot of runs when you're hitting sub 250, and
It's
that's how
unbelievable.
most of these teams in this conference are.
Yeah.
They're hitting sub 250, but they've got to score 5 runs to win. North Texas, not the case. Got to
Like
score 3.
if they would have gotten a I don't know, a 4 team ERA, a team ERA of 4, let me rephrase that. And they're still only hitting 242, they might have had a much different outcome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
their pitching's
Unf
definitely better than some of the other teams.
Yeah. They lost their ace from a year ago in Ashley Peters, who was 14-8 with a 1.56 ERA. But their number 2 is back, and she was just as good. She was 12-8 on the year with a 1.54 ERA. Um, threw just as many innings as Ashley Peters did. Bring back 2 of their best hitters in Kaylee Gamble and Sierra Simon. Uh, funny enough, they bring in a really good transfer from none other than UTSA in Kat Ibarra, who's an infielder, started every single game for UTSA last year, hit 368, had 14 doubles, had 4 home runs. Guess how many triples she had?
6.
4. It's
Okay.
close. But 4 triples, that's a ton of triples for one season.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. 443 on base percentage with 22 walks. And for somebody who had 4 triples, she only stole 6 bases, which is I found that to be kind of weird.
That's what I was about to ask whenever you said how many triples she had. I was gonna ask how many stolen bases, because typically those go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, but she only had 6. But that again,
You
that
gotta
might
be
not be her
really
fault.
conservative when you're
Yeah,
UTSA at that point, so because you were probably losing your game.
yeah. But yeah, like that could have came from a coaching
Yeah,
um philosophy and not necessarily like she may not have had a green light at any point in the season.
yeah.
So, um yeah, I mean I'd imagine I mean it's going to be tough for them in the circle losing Ashley Peters. I mean they still have their number 2 Mackenzie Wagner. Um but I mean you're talking about going from splitting the workload to now that really all falls on one person. Because they don't they didn't bring in any pitchers. They didn't bring
I'm not
in
really sure
any.
what their thought process was on that one, but
I don't either. They didn't bring in any transfer pitchers, and they didn't bring in any freshman pitchers. I know they had other pitchers on staff, but they were nowhere near as good,
yeah, they
or
didn't.
or they didn't throw a significant amount of innings. So I don't know. Maybe you just end up because I mean, as with a team ERA at 2.13, like you're still talking about your pitchers who didn't throw a lot of innings. They're still, you know, they still have a good ERA.
Mhm.
So maybe just your pitcher who threw, 40 innings last year, she's just getting a much larger workload this year. So I'm sure they'll be fine.
I'm sure they know
They,
more about it than we do.
yeah, they're gonna have to figure out a better approach at the plate. They
Yeah,
gotta score. They gotta score more runs. Have to. And I think they have a really good opportunity to win this conference if they can figure that out. But that is a tall task to go from 242 to a respectable batting average.
yeah.
You got UAB, a lot like Tulsa,
Mhm.
uh, right there around 500, a little bit better than 500, 29 and 25. Did pretty well in conference, which had them finish third,
Yes.
third in the conference.
Yeah.
Uh, but their 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 team ERA was above a 4.
And I think that's a big contributor to what hurt them. I mean,
Ye
offensively, not the best, but I mean, it's right on par with the other teams. So,
yeah, I mean, it's better than North Texas, it's better than South Florida, it's
mhm.
better than Tulsa, but all 3 of the teams that we just mentioned had better pitching. Not necessarily by a long shot, but, like,
Still better. Still
yeah,
not before.
yeah. Um, and I mean, they didn't go out and they didn't go out and get any transfers. They just brought in 10 freshmen. So, I guess they're
Just
really
grabbed a big old handful and was like, "Yeah,
yeah.
we'll just
I
take y'all."
guess I guess they're really hoping that these inexperienced freshmen are gonna just be able to come in and make a huge impact right off the bat, which
Yeah. Also,
it could.
what confused me about UAB stats was their 265 batting average and their 333 on base percentage. But if you looked at their walk to strikeout ratio as a team, it was almost 1 to 1.
Yeah,
So it was 114 walks to 165 strikeouts, which is a lot better than most teams. And so
yeah,
maybe maybe they just hit it to people because I mean they're obviously not going up there swinging for the moon every time, nor are they swinging and missing that often compared to how many times it
I
got walked. But
Yeah, I mean, I would say they not having watched a lot of UAB softball or really any UAB softball last year. Um, I would imagine that they're they have a high percentage of contact,
yeah,
and they probably play a lot of small ball. It's just unfortunately that they need more pieces than just the small ball pieces, right? And they didn't steal a lot of bases as a team. They only stole 50. So
okay,
they didn't have this speed to really put pressure on defenses. They were literally just trying to scratch runs across. So you get a runner on first, and you're talking about trying to bunt them over, right? So you bunt them over, you move them in a scoring position, and then somebody gets a bloop single, and that one run scores,
yeah,
and that's it, you know. Or somebody miraculously hits a double, and then you bunt them to third, and then somebody rolls over a ball to second base, and
and you
that
can
run
score
has,
them.
yeah. That's what I would imagine their offense looked like last year. And then other than that, it was just a lot of rollovers, lazy pop flies, just not
Yeah,
hard contact, you know. High rates of contact, but just not hard contact.
right.
Yes, I mean UAB not like super impressive, but I don't I don't really see them coming in this conference and it's like blowing anything out of the water, you know.
No, I think they're sitting middle of the pack.
Yeah, same. As far as Charlotte goes, I mean, we got to see what Charlotte could do last year when they faced Duke in regionals, and I mean, they took it to Duke, which, looking at their team numbers, is is extremely surprising. Like,
They played Duke twice, I think, right?
yeah, I think
Because they won. I think they won a game in regionals. I'm really
I
sure.
don't,
I feel like they
I
played
don't,
first and lost. Let me
I
look.
feel like I remember that, but then I also vaguely remember thinking that and looking it up and it not being that.
Okay.
I know that the last game they played, it was relatively close. It was like a 2 or 3 run game,
Hmm.
and it came down to like the last 2 innings when Duke actually like went ahead and ended up winning the game.
I really feel like they played Duke twice, but I don't know. But nonetheless, we know that they made it to regionals, and North Texas did not.
Yeah,
Uh,
Charlotte could hit a little bit better than North Texas, not much. They're sitting at a 260. Um, on base percentage, not great, 375. They struck out a bunch.
how many strikeouts did they? Did I write their strikeouts down?
They struck out 334 times,
Yep, that's why I didn't write it down.
and
Yeah,
they only walked 206 times.
300. Man, they're swinging.
Yeah, I
They
mean
swinging.
they hit 78 home runs last year, so they definitely sold out to the home run ball. Launch angle, baby. Trying to get that vertical bat pass.
Oh, I wonder
Oh,
what their two-strike approach looks like.
we're gonna shrink it, baby. We're gonna shrink it.
Oh, that was
2 strikes, middle. That's what
yeah.
I'm looking
That's
for.
all I want. I'm not protecting because they're gonna throw it right down the pipe for me. Because that makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, they played Duke twice. They played Campbell twice and Duke twice.
Okay.
And they beat Campbell both times. Lost to Duke 0-5, and then lost to him again 2-4.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, they didn't get blown out by Duke, and Duke was a very good team.
Yeah. Duke was really good last year. I mean, they've been good since they started their program.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd imagine Charlotte comes in and is able to take the the conference. Same thing with North Texas. Like I think North Texas has an opportunity to win the conference, but if they're going to do so, they have to figure out how to score more runs because you're not going to take the conference from Wichita State if you can't score.
Right.
And Wichita State has pitching that can compete.
I was about to say Wichita State had better pitching than
Yeah,
Charlotte.
like Wichita State, like we said earlier, Wichita State can actually compete with Power Five schools that were in the top three of their conference. They can compete with Oklahoma State. They can compete with Texas. They can compete with Florida State and Clemson and Duke. They can compete. So you're gonna have to figure it out.
Charlotte, that means you're gonna have to compete.
Yeah. And but that's what I'm saying. Like they proved that they can compete when they played Duke last year,
Hmm.
but that was a very small sample size.
Right.
You're talking about two games where they were in those games, but they offensively couldn't keep up, and then in the circle couldn't keep up. Right? They couldn't keep Duke from scoring more than they did, which I mean that's the name of the game. But
That is indeed how it works.
and they lose 28 home runs in Cassidy Cruppet and Bailey Vanoy,
Yep.
which I know is going to be really hard to replace. But their ace is back, Sam Gress.
Hmm.
They got a couple, not a couple. They got a few transfers, a trio of transfers. Um, again, none of which, none of them saw significant playing time at their previous schools, so didn't have really great numbers to report about. I would imagine that they're probably going to get their fair shake at Charlotte, but I don't necessarily feel like they're going to be game changers for that Charlotte lineup.
No,
You
I
got
mean they're
to,
bringing in that South Carolina pitcher, but she's
yeah,
still. I mean, she had a 3.36 almost ERA. Like
yeah. I mean, when you're talking about adding that to Sam Gress, who was at a
what?
1.91, like
Right.
Leah Powell, the South Carolina transfer, is probably just going to elevate that team ERA. Unfortunately,
Hopefully she doesn't, but at
yeah.
the
I
trend
mean,
she's on, that's what you'd expect.
I mean, it could be that Leah Powell, she had a small sample size at South Carolina, so maybe just in the short term, she that small stretch of innings that she got, maybe that was what led to a slightly more elevated ERA, but and maybe over the course of I don't know 115 innings, that ERA drops a little bit, but I don't necessarily think that she's gonna come in and get a large workload because Sam Gress threw 227 innings last year. So
Did just fine for him.
yeah, so she's probably just going to do the same thing again.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, yeah.
Um,
You got anything else you want to add about Charlotte?
no, I don't think so. I mean, they're losing. You said, like you said, they're losing those 28 home runs and those two batters, two hitters, but they do have one of their better hitters still returning, so that's a plus. Um, and Ashley Washington,
Hmm.
who her difference between her batting average and her on base percentage was strange. Like she had 257 batting average, but a 432 on base percentage, getting a lot of walks.
Yeah,
She had more walks than she had hits.
I remember you telling me that she had
Yeah.
one more walk than she did hits.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when you say that they're returning that hitter in Ashley Washington. I mean,
I mean, it sounds bad, but I mean, she hit
I,
nine
I mean,
doubles and 10 home runs. Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess there's production there, but I think, like we said, when you talk about the strikeout numbers for Charlotte and the home run numbers, like their team approach is a
like
swing for the fences mindset. Like their approach is to do damage, and I think there's probably a little bit too much vertical bat angle being taught, and so you
too
have a
much lift.
high, yeah, you have a very high whiff rate, and that did not work for Washington.
No, she
Like,
had 43 strikeouts.
yeah, I mean, with 10 home runs, it worked a little bit because you probably saw power numbers
Hmm.
increase. Um, but she didn't get to Division I softball by chance. She didn't get to Division I softball as a position player because she couldn't hit before.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, something changed, which I believe is a little bit of a sellout to the home run ball. And we get a high whiff rate because clearly she's not a girl who doesn't understand the strike zone, right?
Right.
You
You
don't
know,
have,
you understand, you have almost 40 walks. You understand.
right. You know where the strike zone is, so it's not a lot of strikeout looking. It's a high whiff rate.
Yeah.
Like just plain and simple, it's a high whiff rate. And or probably coupled with a lot of lazy pop-ups on the infield and
Rollovers.
roll over ground balls.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
So
mean, if she could go into this season and take away, put up the same amount of walks or close to, obviously 40 walks in a season would be hard. But if you put up close to the same amount of walks and take away 10 strikeouts, your numbers already sound way better than they were.
yeah,
'Cause there's people in the Power Five that had 25 something strikeouts. Like, you just 43 is just a lot. But again, that's the team approach, not that's not an approach specific to Ashley Washington.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, we can move
Yeah.
on from Charlotte.
All right. Yeah, I mean between Charlotte and North Texas, I would say that they got if they can figure out offensively, I mean, heck, even Florida Atlantic, who we're fixing to talk about now, like,
Yeah, I was about to say I wouldn't count the Owls out.
yeah, I mean they got eliminated by again a really good MTSU team last year in their conference tournament. What were they, fourth
Hmm.
in the regular season? Fourth in fourth in the regular season, with a 15-9 conference record, 35-20 overalls. It's one of those overall records that's not like something to jump up and down about, but
Still an
it's
accomplishment.
yeah, I mean it 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 meets a standard, I guess you
Yeah.
could say, of a respectable program, right? Like you look at a team that's at that 35 win mark, the 20-ish loss mark, and you're like, okay, they can play a little bit. And then their team numbers indicate that they can play a little bit.
Right.
um, like
I'll
Florida
give them their
Atlantic's,
pitching. Their pitching's
yeah,
pretty
pitching is pretty good. You're talking about a 2.1 ERA as a staff. That's pretty solid. I mean, this same thing with North Texas. North Texas is like a 2.13. Like it's, I mean, it's good. It's it's not it's not Clemson good. It's not Florida State good, but it's good. Should be able to go out every game and expect to, at a minimum, be in the ball game.
right.
It's just, again, those offensive numbers. We can't figure out how to score. We can't figure out how to get on base.
We
We're we're
have
not we're not striking out 300 and some times, but we're striking out
still.
250
I was about to
times.
say they're still striking out a good bit,
Yeah.
and they
But I
weren't hit. But
mean,
they weren't hitting the long ball. FAU's not hitting the long ball. So why they have that many strikeouts? Because they
see
weren't selling out.
see that's the thing though about that number of strikeouts. I feel like that is consistent with every other team that we've looked at this far. Not in this conference, just every team that we've
In
looked
general.
at. Yeah. Outside of like Oklahoma and Florida State,
Mm-hmm.
basically being a 1-for-1 ratio or 1-to-1 ratio, like everybody's generally been around this like
1 to 2 ish.
120, 130, 140 walks to 240, 250 some strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. And so I don't necessarily think it's the strikeouts that's causing the lack of offense. I think I think it comes down to hard contact,
You're saying do you,
Like
like there's not many gap shots, line drives, hard ground balls, that type deal?
yeah, just hard contact in general, like
Okay.
exit velocity off the bat is just not there. Like you're talking about high contact rate, but it's soft.
But there's no pressure put on the defense from the contact of the ball.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's kind of what those numbers say to me, is because again, strikeouts are, yes, they're high. They're way more than a 1-to-1, but they're on par with most of the other really good teams that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And but it's just the batting average doesn't reflect what these other teams look like. And so, like you said, they're not selling out to the long ball. Like if they were selling out to the long ball, they'd look like Charlotte, right? And you'd
Right.
have over 300 strikeouts. I just think that they're probably making contact. It's just not hard contact. Probably got one too many slappers and just generally undersized athletes.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, Florida Atlantic, another team who hit the transfer portal really hard, brought in quite a few transfers. Um, like a lot of transfers. Uh, so they bring in, let's see, they bring in three outfielders, two catchers, one pitcher, no, two pitchers. One of the outfielders is also a pitcher.
Okay.
And then one infielder and a utility. Um, their utility player that they bring in. She's a grad transfer from Arkansas, Callie Kildo. She batted 308 through only 39 at bats in 2022. That was really the only significant playing time that she had. Um, 39 at bats, I don't feel like is like it's a really small sample size, but I feel like I mean, if you were talking considering she only had 39 at bats that year, right?
Yeah,
You're talking about what, one at bat every other game
close to.
ish.
Yeah,
So I mean, to consistently hit 308 for that entire season, just coming off the bench and getting one pinch hit at bat every other game, like that's tough to do. So I'd imagine if she got the opportunity to play every day, she'd be a lot better.
right.
But
Well, I don't know. Keep going with your transfers.
they bring in another grad transfer from Lipscomb, outfielder Presley Liebrick. She was a career 322 hitter through 488 at bats. She was an everyday starter. Um, so I mean, already just if you take Callie Kildo out and you just focus on Presley Liebrick here, like you're already off to a better start offensively.
Presley Liebrick is a player I've I don't know. I know of her just because she's from where I'm from. Anything I've ever heard about her is that she's just a freaking athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And even where I think she went to Siegel High School or something in Murfreesboro. And I mean, she balled out in high school and balled out at Lipscomb. You can go look at her
Yeah.
stats at Lipscomb and see that she was one of their best players.
Yeah, I mean, you hit 322 your entire career.
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
it's
it's,
pretty solid.
it's pretty all
Pretty good.
right.
Yeah. It's good enough for me to pencil you in the lineup
Right.
every day for 4 years.
And I think she
Uh,
brings speed too to their team. I don't know. At least as an outfielder, you know she has some speed, but I don't know as
yeah,
far
yeah,
as
yeah.
stolen
I
bases
see.
go.
Yeah, that I do remember looking at her stats, and it kind of threw me off her being an outfielder and not having. She didn't have a
High
bunch of
number of
stolen
stolen.
bases.
Hmm.
Mm-mm.
That's interesting.
Um, I think I want to say she was like in the teens for her whole career at Lipscomb. I could be wrong. It could have been in the 20s, but it wasn't
It wasn't
significant enough for me to
15
write it
years or
down.
something. Yeah.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um, and then their pitcher outfielder, she's the only other one that I have a little bit on. Trinity Schlotterbeck, grad transfer from Maryland. Um, Offensively, didn't really do much of anything noteworthy, but as a pitcher, 15-7 last year with a 2.17 ERA. Like that's respectable. I mean,
Right.
it's it's her ERA is slightly elevated compared to Florida Atlantic's team ERA from a year ago, but I mean, you throw her in the mix with their ace Gabby Sacco from last year and their number three, Ainsley Lambert, and she re- she's an upgrade from their number two
Yeah.
in Lynn Gardner. Lynn Gardner last year was a 2.93 and they lost. She graduated. Um, so I would expect Florida Atlantic's pitching staff just to be better this year.
Yeah, no, I think she's a good pickup for their pitching staff.
Yeah, definitely. It's an upgrade. I mean, there's simply
It
put,
did the
it's an
transfer
upgrade.
portal did them some good for sure.
Yeah. So definitely, definitely a team that we might not want to sleep on.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And then we got UTSA, UT San Antonio. Like we said, just abysmal last year, 8-41, 3-20 in conference, a lot like Memphis. Somehow managed to hit a couple points higher than Memphis, scored a few more runs. Their team ERA was 2 points lower than Memphis's, but pretty much the same team. Like just a copy and paste,
Yeah.
change the colors. Um, and UTSA lost their best player,
Right.
Catabara, who transferred to North Texas. So, oh, but I don't know. I mean, that's every team in the conference now. We've talked about quite a few players. Who are some players that you wrote down specifically to look out for?
Well, you just mentioned one of them. It was Gabby Sacco
Yeah,
at Florida Atlantic. She is
yeah,
obviously their pitcher. She was a Conference USA Pitcher of the Year last year. Um, I mean, she threw 169.1 innings with 16 complete games and had a 1.91 ERA. I mean, that's a solid stat line across the board. A 19-8 record, and her opponents were only batting a 204. Which I mean, the opponent's batting average of 204 is one of the lower ones that I've seen throughout the AAC and Conference USA.
yeah.
So FAU's got some talent.
Yeah, they do for sure. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. Um,
Out for the Owls.
I put down Sam Gress from Charlotte. I mean, you throw almost 230 innings and still have a sub two ERA and an arm. Um, you definitely deserve to be on a watch list somewhere.
Yeah. And
Uh,
an arm. Your arm's still intact,
yeah,
still functioning.
yeah.
No.
I just mentioned Kat Ibarra a second ago. She transferred from UTSA to North Texas. Um, I mean, she was the Cal Ripken Junior of North Texas or of UTSA last year, starting every single game. Um, hit 368, and I mean we went through her numbers earlier. So she's going to be better with North Texas because she's going to have more pieces around her. She's going to be on a better ball club, so I'd imagine she would put up even better numbers this year.
Yeah.
You got
I think
anybody else?
being on a better ball club will definitely
Yeah,
give her, always helps a little bit.
yeah. Up the spirits a little bit, boost the morale. Gonna
Yeah.
be riding a high horse going into the season
Instead of getting
with a mean machine. You know,
green,
mean
green.
mean green, baby.
But they have like an eagle or something.
Hmm.
I don't get it. I never seen a green eagle.
Philadelphia.
No, that doesn't count. That's just a color. They're at least called the Philadelphia Eagles. They're not called the Philadelphia Mean Green. We're gonna put an eagle as our logo.
Hey, why don't you just move on? How about that? Get off North Texas
Well, I'm
for
actually gonna stay on North Texas because I put over North Texas.
who did you
Um,
put?
I added Kaylee Gamble.
Okay, yeah.
She was a pretty solid hitter for him. 316 batting average and 444 on base percentage and smacked 16 homers. So
Yeah, she also had 37 walks. That's why her
yeah,
on-base percentage was so high.
well, yeah. And she had 445 chances on defense. It only made 6 errors.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good defense.
Yeah.
So I added Kaylee Gamble from North Texas, but now I can move on from North Texas from the Mean Green.
Mm. Well,
I'm just
I'm not going to move on from North Texas. I'm going to throw Mackenzie Wagner. Like North Texas number 2 last year, 12-8 on the year, 1.54 ERA through 102 innings. Like that's
yeah,
good. That's good
I'd probably
stuff
put her on
right
the watch
there.
list.
Yeah, that's good stuff right there. Um, but I'm not done. I got to throw some girls out from Memphis. I got to give Memphis a shout out here. Um, Hopefully they perform a lot better than most of the girls on Memphis' team in years past because they're JUCO transfers and they were the bomb.com last year. You got Aaliyah Dixon who transfers from Jones College. She was a 2022 second team All American, batted 343 with 11 doubles, 2 triples, 13 home runs, and 44 RBIs last year. And then you have McKaylee Polk, who is a JUCO transfer from Northwest Mississippi Community College, who
Football program.
was, yep, she was a 2022 NFCA D2 JUCO D2 first team All American and a 2023 NJCA first team All American. She batted 397 with 18 doubles, 1 triple, 18 home runs, and 61 RBIs last year. So for a team that couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat last year, these
That's
two
some
should
that's
help.
some fat offensive numbers right there. 18 doubles
Yeah,
and 18 home runs.
yeah.
Power.
RBI is looking a lot like somebody else I know who plays
They
at Stanford now.
they might get to 200 runs scored.
Yeah, I mean, what's 18 plus 13? I'm done doing math.
That is hard numbers.
Let's see, 8, 9,
35,
10, 11. No,
33,
I think it's 31.
31. You're right. You're I I surely just watched you go 8, 9, 10, 11. Cheese and rice, that's horrible. Oh,
Oh. But yeah, I would. I mean, we've mentioned a bunch of other really good players who we could throw on this list as well. We're talking about Presley Liebrick, um, Florida Atlantic's grad transfer. I mean,
Tulsa's top two returners or top two hitters that are returning.
yeah, Amani. Oh, what was her
Haley
last name?
Morgan,
Yeah, Haley Morgan and oh goodness, it's gonna drive me nuts. I gotta find it. Amani Edwards. Jeez. And then, of course, they're two JUCO transfers as well, Alexa Hopkins and Macy Cole. Like, there are really good players in this conference,
hmm
and I mean that alone, just the player, the makeup of these teams alone is worth watching the AAC. It all comes down to leadership, like I said earlier. If and I
uh-huh.
culture's a buzzword that gets thrown around the coaching community a lot now, and like it's kind of getting played out a little bit, but there's a lot of validity if you got a good culture. Like
Yep.
there's a lot of validity in that that argument about culture. Like if your culture is good, if everybody cares about the team and doing what is necessary for the team,
I mean, that's what I was saying
it's
earlier is you may have all these good individual players and you put them together and their team chemistry is no good, then it does the team no good.
mm-hmm.
And that's part of the whole culture thing. Like you can't
Yeah,
just take nine individuals and they play as nine individuals. They have to play as one.
yeah.
Well, I guess really probably like 20 individuals, but nine are only playing at a time. So
But I mean the bench players, they still matter,
they're,
right? Like
well, yeah.
it well, I mean like as far as like the team chemistry and like, if your bench is just Like if
out
if
of it.
you're if you're one of the 9 on the field and your bench is just chilling on the bench.
Oh, you're annoyed for sure, and you don't.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I'm
And
done with
then
them.
yeah, your mind is no longer on the game because you're worried about them. But like also it that feeds into practice and off the field
Mhm.
stuff, which just destroys it's just cancerous. So, but anyway, well, let's just get off our coaching soapbox for a second.
Mm.
So let's now that we've talked about every single team in this conference, who do you have as a sleeper?
I really want to pick two. I want to pull a Panera pick two.
I mean, I honestly don't blame you. I could go Wendy's 4 for 4 here.
That was a good one. That was good.
Thank you, thank you.
But I feel like we're on the same page about one of them. You may say
Oh,
who.
we might be. Oh man,
Oh, that was really funny.
that was good. That was
Thank
good.
you.
All right, so 2-3-1 or 2-3-1, 3-2-1. Oh man, you got to be able to
Man,
laugh at yourself. Can't take everything so seriously.
I don't know how you couldn't laugh at that.
I know. All
Don't
right,
know how to
three, two,
count.
one,
Okay.
3-2-1. Tulsa.
Did you say Tulsa?
I did say Tulsa.
I was gonna say FAU and Tulsa.
Cool.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Um,
How can you not pick Tulsa? I mean,
well, probably because they were sub
other
500
uh,
last year.
other than a couple of things, such as their overall record and their 4.5 ERA. Offensively, they're right there with the others. And
Yeah.
they're bringing in two good JUCO players.
Two really good JUCO
Yeah,
players.
like
Yeah.
they're on the come up. The old Golden
Yeah.
Hurricanes coming
Yeah.
in hot. I didn't have a play on words for Golden Hurricane. Couldn't think of one quick enough.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have nothing. I will say this though. It kind of irks my nerves to throw a sleeper pick to yet another Oklahoma team.
You know, I'm gonna sound really dumb here. I really, not now, but for a really long time, I thought Tulsa, really exposing myself, I thought Tulsa was just a little further south, east, perhaps in Florida.
This is a part of the episode that I need to cut out.
It makes
Um,
sense. They're literally called the Golden Hurricane. There ain't hurricanes in Oklahoma. Who does that? Tulsa just sounds like a Florida city.
there aren't tigers in Memphis outside of the
Uh-huh.
zoo
There might be.
illegally.
Exactly. There's not a golden hurricane being held hostage in Oklahoma. So, anyways, I just had to get that
I
off my chest.
don't I don't really want to dive into why Tulsa's mascot is the Golden Hurricane. We just leave it as what it is.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, Tulsa is my sleeper. I like your you pick. You could go with. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a pop up message. Um, you could go. I mean, you could go North Texas. You could go Charlotte. You could go South Florida. I think that would be a mistake. But yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for feeling the need to pick a second pick
Yeah.
because who do you have ultimately winning the conference?
I have Wichita State.
Yeah, samesies.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a
I have
shock.
Wichita State at the top.
Wouldn't be a shocker.
Don't don't do that.
Oh, yeah, and I mean we've talked about ECU and Memphis already a little bit. Like my hot take involves them as far as them just being utter garbage, not being able to hit their way out of a wet paper bag. They're basically the bad news bears of the AAC. It can only go up from here, though.
That's
Right?
true. That's true.
Same thing with UTSA.
Gotta
I
start
just said,
somewhere.
yeah.
And unfortunately for them, it's from the bottom.